Okay, well, maybe we'll just get started. It's this is going to be a good discussion. Good small numbers, which helps promote discussion. So my name is Paul Vincelli. I'm from the University of Kentucky, and I'm part of the SARE program. And Candace will say more about our SARE outreach team. Yeah, maybe I'll just turn it to Candace Pollock-Moore, who is our Assistant Director for the Southern SARE region.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, especially right after lunch. So hopefully we don't have, your bellies are not too full. I wanted to say that I'm the Assistant Director of the Southern Region SARE program, and I'm also the grant manager of our 3 smaller grant programs. We'll be going through those grant programs and a couple other grant opportunities through the presentation. But I wanted to just give a little bit of background about our SARE outreach team. We have been doing SARE outreach with regards to a specific SARE outreach team for several years now. We visit states throughout the southern region every year for a number of different purposes. One is to raise awareness of the SARE program with stakeholders in the respective states in terms of the grant opportunities that we offer and the educational resources that are available to those who wish to utilize them for their purposes of furthering sustainable agriculture. And then we also work with stakeholders to find ways to address solutions to some of the challenges that they may be facing with regards to implementing sustainable agriculture production and marketing practices in their communities. So our outreach team includes the following individuals. Dara Monifa Cooper is our communications specialist. She is currently based out of the University of Virgin Islands. Well, she works for University of Georgia. She's currently located in the Virgin Islands. Patrick Lillard is our NGO representative who sits on our administrative council. David Redditch is our professional development program manager based out of the Kerr Center for Sustainable Agriculture in Oklahoma, and he is also the grant manager of the professional development program grant. Brennan Washington is our 1890 land grant liaison and our limited resource outreach specialist for the region. And Paul is our 1862 land grant liaison based out of University of Kentucky. And all of these individuals will be contributing to our presentation this afternoon. And I'll turn it over to Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Candace. Matt and Jonathan, do you guys want to say something to start things off?
Sure. I'm Matt Smith, and I'm one of the co-coordinators of South Carolina SARE. I'm the co-coordinator for Clemson. And Jonathan Wyndham, who's on, is the program assistant for SARE in South Carolina. I appreciate everybody joining us and hope you learned something and you need to know more information. You can contact anybody you hear from today, but Jonathan and I are two of your state contacts, and you'll find out about others down the road. So I'll turn it over to John and he'll do more. Jonathan, he'll do some more introductions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Wyndham. I'm the SARE program assistant and an extension associate at the PD in Florence. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today. So I'm just going to go down the list here and call out your name. If you would just introduce yourself briefly, we appreciate it. So Dr. Andre, would you go ahead?
Trying to unmute. Yeah, I'm John Andre. I'm the assistant director of the Clemson Experiment Station, South Carolina Experiment Station, Ag Experiment Station, and I missed the administrator meeting yesterday. I was at a soybean board meeting, but I'm happy to join today.
We're happy to have you. Thank you. All right, Joseph Lewis. Joseph. Okay. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name. Costas. Okay. And we have 2 phone numbers for people who called in. So if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Don Jackson.
All right, thank you.
Josh Moore.
All right, it looks like everyone. Dr. Vincelli.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Great. So thanks once again for joining us here today, folks. And there are 3 kind of expectations, or maybe, hopes would be a good way to think about it. 3 things that we hope we can accomplish through today's meeting. One is provide you all in South Carolina with a better understanding of the SARE program, the opportunities for grants and collaborations, so that you better can take advantage of what we offer. The second bullet there is for us to understand your needs in South Carolina, your resources and your interests, and of course, with the outcome that perhaps our grant programs can do a better job of meeting your needs. And third is to build confidence in SARE decisions to the extent appropriate, and help as an outcome, there'll be better understanding of the review process. And we actually will cover that as we go forward. Next slide, please, Candace. Okay, and so here are 3 questions as an example of the kinds of things we'd be glad to hear about, in the open discussion at the end of the presentation. And number 1 is what are the missed opportunities for South Carolina within our program? We'd like to know. And I've had some discussions about those, and they've been helpful. 2, how can SARE's visibility and engagement be improved? Both your local SARE representatives and beyond. And third is, how can you suggest any change? Are there changes you can suggest or improvements to the SARE grants program? Next slide. There's the map of our 4 regions in the SARE program. The 4 rather independent regions, and we're in the southern, both of us, for those of us in Kentucky and those of us from other states, including South Carolina. Next slide. So a quick overview, SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. It's a USDA program. It was authorized by the 1985 Farm Bill. And currently we have a funding, overall funding of about $36 million allocated to the SARE program. So it's certainly a robust program, and as far as I can tell, it's still growing and growing in good ways. And it's administered through the 4 regions that you saw with USDA support. The goal of SARE is to support farmers, researchers, and educators in exploring sustainable ag practices. My phone's trying to buzz at me. Okay. So it's all about sustainable ag practices. The main thing we do to promote those practices and exploration of those practices is our grants program. There are 5 programs with distinct target populations. And so it's really a varied program, as you'll see. Next slide. But there are other ways of promoting sustainability too that we'll talk about. So this is kind of a fun picture of my family, but the team seems to like it as a representation of our thanks to people who produce food. So John, I see a smile on your face. Thank you for that. Every one of you helps produce food in some way. And we appreciate that because it helps feed us and our families. So thank you. Next slide. All right, two thought-provoking slides. This is the first of 2. And as far as I can tell, the most sustainable food system that humans have ever enjoyed is the hunter-gatherer existence. And that persisted. I mean, the evidence for sustainability is that it persisted with steady state, more or less steady state populations globally for tens of thousands of years, many tens of thousands of years. But so it's very sustainable, but it's one of the problems is, of course, it doesn't come anywhere close to supporting the populations we have even today, and that those populations are increasing. So that's not the answer to sustainability. Next slide. The most sustainable food system I've witnessed is this one in Eastern Nicaragua. There's one of the indigenous people that was our host when we visited. And they use a system that's called slash mulch. And you slash the forest with a big machete, and you cut down most of the vegetation, and that releases over the course of time nutrition for a few years anyway, from the decomposing vegetation, and then you allow it to regrow into forest. And so it looks destructive, but you got to realize that you're cutting down relatively small portions of forest and allowing them to regrow back to full mature forest before you recut. So it truly seems to be a sustainable system, but the problem is, as you can see there, it can't come close to supporting all the people that we have on planet Earth. So that's not the answer. And the reason why I like to bring these up is, in addition to just the promote thought about the subject, it helps me understand just how challenging sustainability really is. And there aren't going to be easy answers to sustainability issues, particularly on the full picture of global food systems. We're in a tough area, folks, and we need all your good ideas. And that's kind of what SARE is about. And anyway, that's just a way to think about that. Next slide. So this is the last of my slides. There is a formal definition of sustainable agriculture passed by Congress, and it's a very good definition. But I like this because SARE also speaks in terms of the pillars of sustainability, as you can see here, and it's a little bit more intuitive, even though the formal definition is quite good. So what are the pillars? Profitability or economic vitality of farms. That's number one. Without that, of course, we all know that there would not be food. And so we must have profitable economic ventures in farming. Second is stewardship, and we usually think of the environment in that capacity. Third is quality of life, and that refers to the farmer, farm family, rural communities, and urban and suburban communities, the whole picture, quality of life for all. And that's the one that probably I would say, as a natural scientist, I've probably thought the least about. So I'm kind of trying to turn that around here in the latter part of my career. So it's an important element as well. Next slide. Oh, that's it. This is Patrick's.
Thanks, Paul. So I'm Patrick Lillard, and as Candace mentioned, I'm an NGO representative on the Southern SARE Administrative Council. So I'll talk a little bit of the background of SARE, and it's a really unique federal program, and it's quite flexible and adaptable, which is great because it means that we can kind of adjust and fit our region's needs. So I'll talk a little bit about how we're structured. So SARE was funded through the 1985 Farm Bill, and it had a lot of local land grant leadership support, and it still does. It has support through the deans and the land grant universities, that each land grant provides some support for the state coordinators. And so each state has a state coordinator at the land grant. And the Southern SARE region is unique in that each of our states has two land grants, the 1862 and the 1890. And so each state has two state coordinators. And then there's also a state program assistant that's funded through SARE. So, and how that state support looks a little different depending on the state. One of kind of our expectations with Southern SARE is kind of that partnership between 1890 and 1862. And again, that looks different depending on each state. Next slide. So as I was saying, SARE is a really unique federal program. And I think one of the things that makes it really unique is that it's divided into 4 regions, and each region has a host institution. And so for the Southern region, ours is the University of Georgia. And by the federal program being administered through a host institution, there's actually quite a bit of flexibility in how the program's administered. So Jeff Jordan is the director for Southern SARE at University of Georgia. And so each twice a year, the Southern SARE Administrative Council gets together to kind of decide some of that direction and awarding of funds. And a little bit about the Administrative Council. The Southern SARE has 23 AC members. 11 are agency representatives that are appointed by their respective agency. So that include USDA agencies as well as land grant representatives. There's also 12 positions that are through nominations. And so people can apply to be members. And those are divided into 7 producer appointments, 3 NGOs, 1 agribusiness, and 1 quality of life. And the goal is to have as many voices as possible from the region of the Administrative Council. And so it provides for some great discussion and very intentional thought as to how we can best meet the needs of our region. Another unique thing about this program is that all of our AC members review grants. Most of them were reviewing grants that are relevant to our position. So the producers review the producer and on-farm grants. Let's see, what are the other ones? Well, Dara will talk about some of the other ones. But what we do is we usually review the proposals in committee, and then the committee will recommend funding grants to the full Administrative Council, and then we'll vote as a full AC. So one important thing to note about that is when writing proposals for SARE, just being aware that it's being reviewed by producers, NGO representatives, and agency representatives. So writing it in a way that it's easily understood by a very broad audience. And I'll let Dara talk about the specific grants.
Yes, thank you. So specific grants, as you mentioned, we got 5 here that you're viewing, and I'll mention them, and then you'll notice on the following slides that they have acronyms, which I'm still getting used to myself. So research and education, professional development program, graduate student, on-farm research, and producer grants. And as you'll see, and I believe Paul mentioned, the flagship grants are these research and education grants. And the research grants, the amount there you see is about 400,000. For education grants is about 50,000. And there's a pre-proposal and full proposal process. And the call for proposals opens up in March. And you'll hear a little bit later the specific month, but the funding will come in 2023. The professional development program grants include things like the train to trainer. They also have a pre and full proposal process capped at 80,000 with the call opening in July, funding in 2023, which is the following year. The grad student grants are for master's and PhD students, and that caps at 16,500,000, sorry, with the call opening in February for funding the same year, later in the year. The on-farm research grants are for ag professionals who work with farmers. And we call that one a mini grant. Candace will get a little more into that. And that amount is 20,000. The call opens in September for funding the following year. And the producer grants for farmers and farmer groups, 15,000 is for individual farmers, 20,000 for farmers groups, with the call opening in September for funding the following year in 2023. On the next slide, what you'll see is the grant history of South Carolina. So this one and the following 2 slides, we'll get into more specifics about South Carolina. So if you see on the map, there's a replication of the information that's here on the side, but you see where South Carolina falls within the southern states. And since 1988, South Carolina has been awarded 3,280,190 grants, which supported 67 projects. And as you see in the bullets below that, broken down by the various grants, the producer grant had 19 applicants that were awarded, and their total amount monetarily was 171,910. And so each of those spells out to the number of grants and the total amount. So graduate students were 6 grants, on-farm were 10, there were 11 PDP grants and 15 R&E grants. And you see the amounts in those. So the next 2 slides get into the results from a national survey of where South Carolina falls in the ranking, I guess, of the various grants. And see they're broken down into R&E, PDP, graduate, and on the next page, you'll see a couple others. But if you go, yeah, there you go, on farmer and producer. So the red is where South Carolina is in that list. So it's about 9 or 10 down under the R&Es, and there were 15 grants totaling $2.1 million. And in the PDPs, there were 11 totaling $648,853. And for graduate, there were 6 totaling $73,864. And as we go on to the next page, you'll see that there's room for improvement in terms of the number of proposals that can come in for all of these various areas to kind of nudge South Carolina up a little higher. The on-farm grants, there were 10, totaling at $142,377. And the producer grants, there were 19, totaling at $171,910. So there's room for growth as it pertains to South Carolina's grant history and proposals. So we can bring those in.
Okay, now we're going to start going over the grant programs we have. And the first one, the largest one, is the research and education grants. The research grants are up to $400,000. The education grants are up to $50,000. Now, several years ago, we broke these apart because there was a meeting with NGOs, and one of the questions was, how can they be competitive? Because a lot of NGOs excel in directly training farmers, and that's not the direction we go with PDP funds, which I'll get to in a second. But the education grants can be used to directly train farmers. Now, the large research grants are focused on researchers, usually interdisciplinary approach, focus on systems, and we do require farmers to be involved. We want this to be practical information that producers can use. There is a pre-proposal and full proposal process. So it starts in March with the pre-proposal call. Those are due in June. Those are reviewed. In August, they are invited back. Those that are selected are invited back to submit a full proposal. November, those full proposals are due. And then in February, the administrative council meets to vote on which ones to actually fund. PDP is a train the trainer. So what we do is PDP, we train individuals who actually go out and train farmers. We say an $80,000 is, we like to see them no higher than that. There's no upper limit, but you really need to justify it if you're going above that. It also is a pre-proposal, full proposal process. The target audience here, again, is train the trainer, Extension, NRCS, FSA, Departments of Ag, nonprofits who actually go out and train those to work with farmers. It's a shorter time frame. The call goes out for pre-proposals in July. In August, they're due. In October, where you receive an invitation to submit a full proposal. Those are due in November, and then they are, at that point, they're reviewed they're reviewed at the pre-proposal stage, but at the full proposal stage, we have a technical review that goes over them, then an AC subcommittee that reviews them, and then the full AC votes on which ones to award funds to.
Thanks, David. I'm just going to briefly cover the 3 smaller grant programs that we have available. The first one is the graduate student grants, which are specifically designed for master's and PhD students at accredited institutions in the southern region who wish to conduct sustainable agriculture research. So those particular grants are going to be opening on February 4th of this year with the grant proposals selected for funding in August, with projects starting on September 1st. The on-farm research grants are what we call our mini grants. They are intended for ag professionals who work directly with farmers who want to collaborate with a farmer to do a small research project on sustainable agriculture. So these are 20,000 two-year projects that are ideal as a stepping stone grant program into a larger grant program. So for example, if you wanted to do a small scale demonstration trial, variety trials, any other kind of sustainable ag research where you would want to be collecting some kind of preliminary data or just to get some kind of research under your belt that you could use to apply for a larger grant program, either with SARE or with another USDA program. This is a really good grant program to go with. It's ideal for new and young researchers who are new to the fold in terms of their universities or to sustainability. It's a good introduction to the SARE program because of the simple nature of the call for proposal. There's no pre-proposal requirement for the on-farm research grants, and the information that we ask for in the call is not as rigorous as with the research and education grant program. And this is a really good grant program for those farmers who have a good relationship with an ag professional, say an extension agent or somebody within NRCS, and they would like to have the researcher involved in the project in terms of writing out the grant and then leading that grant project and then just being involved in the project itself. From a research standpoint, this is a really good grant program to get involved in. The calls for these particular grants open in September with funding in February the following year. The last grant that we provide are the producer grants, which function similarly to the on-farm research grants, but they're specifically designed for the farmer, either an individual farmer or a farmer group to apply for those grants as the principal investigator and to lead that research project. And we encourage those particular farmers who are interested in this grant to collaborate with an ag professional on the project, either somebody with an extension, a researcher at a university perhaps, somebody within a government agency like NRCS or even an NGO to, for a number of different reasons. Now, one would be to help them through the grant writing process. Another reason would be to help aid in the research proposal itself in terms of setting up your experiment, collecting your data, analyzing your results, and then also aiding in that outreach effort to share your results with other farmers. So these particular grants are 2-year projects for $15,000 for individual farmers and $20,000 for farmer groups like cooperatives. And the call for proposal release timeline follows the same schedule as the on-farm research grants. They open in September with funding in February the following year. All of SARE's grant programs are very popular and as such are competitive. And over the years, we've seen a number of different areas that would cause a proposal to be rejected for some reason or another. So just on a broad stroke, these particular tips here, we'd like to talk to potential applicants about to kind of keep these particular tips in mind when they are filling out their grant application to increase the success of them potentially being funded. So a couple of things is for one, we really encourage the applicants obviously to have their proposal be focused on sustainable agriculture and to make sure that the topic that they're interested in fits in with SARE's mission and vision of sustainability, and in some shape or form addresses the 3 pillars of sustainability that Paul mentioned earlier: the farmer profitability, the community quality of life, and the environmental conservation. Topics should be something that is unique or innovative, or if it's covers a subject that has been well researched in the past, it is an aspect of the research that needs further investigation. So sometimes we'll get a proposal that covers a topic where we call it's been there, done that. It's been heavily researched already, either by SARE or by other grant sources. And there are already a plethora of resources that already exist on that topic. So that particular project, even though it might be a well-written proposal, may not necessarily need to be funded by SARE. Another thing that we would like to see applicants focus on is an area of sustainable agriculture research that is what we call transformative change to the more conventional form of farming, and not necessarily something that is a Band-Aid to traditional agriculture from a sustainability standpoint. And then more specifically, the calls should really focus on the budgets and your approaches and methods. So we would like to see grant proposals that are have strong scientific methods and are really detailed in the approaches and methods in terms of how your project is going to be conducted and what materials you will need to conduct your particular project. And a lot of times the budgets on some proposals don't align with those approaches and methods. So we'll see applicants who ask for things in the budgets that are not outlined in their approaches and methods. So they don't line up. And lastly, the applicants should pay attention to what's allowable and not allowable in a budget. In the call for proposals, a lot of times we have applicants that ask for things in the budget that we can't fund. And so sometimes those those proposals will get rejected because of that as well. And I'll turn it over to Brennan.
Brendan is on the road, so I think he had it in mind that Candace, you and I would cover this. How's that work? We can do that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can talk a little bit about this information here. So one of the other things that SARE does in addition to the grant programs is that we provide discretionary funds to fund outreach efforts around sustainable agriculture, and a lot of that takes several forms in the form of financial support for conferences, workshops, and field days. We do provide outreach funds for assistance with with obtaining educational material specifically around SARE resources. We have a program called the Sustainable Ag Leadership Program, which I'll talk a little bit more. And then David will also talk a little bit about discretionary funds tied to the professional development program. So one of the things that we do outside of the grant programs is we provide nominal funds for what we call sponsorship support for educational and outreach activities centered around conferences, field days, sustainable ag workshops, or other educational events. And so we have that information available on our website. And to be considered for such support, there are some guidelines that are involved in that, and that those guidelines are included here in the slide. The event has to pertain to an event in the southern region. Your educational event has to serve farmers or audiences who serve farmers. It has to include an outreach component, which means that what you are conducting or promoting must have a wider benefit to the agricultural community. And of course, it has to relate to sustainable agriculture. And so this sponsorship support, these are not grants. The applications are accepted on a rolling basis throughout the year, and then we go through a review process of reviewing the information and reviewing the budgets to make sure it meets our guidelines. And then depending on the amount that's requested, the sponsorships are reviewed in-house by a small staff team, or if they're larger than the $3,000 minimum that we require for staff review, it goes to either our executive committee or administrative council for review and approval. The Sustainable Ag Leadership Program is something that we started when COVID hit. For a number of reasons. One was our program in itself was not traveling as much and not doing as much outreach because of COVID. And then we were also finding that a lot of individuals were unable to conduct in-person educational events and training as well. So we launched the Sustainable Ag Leadership Program as a way for participants who were interested in sustainable ag to meet virtually. And we specifically designed it around those individuals and those organizations whose leadership contributions serve and support historically underserved audiences. So they're sort of set up similarly to our basic conference sponsorship program, but this particular program specifically targets historically underserved farmers and ranchers in their communities and organizations such as NGOs who serve those particular audiences. And the funding does supports education and training activities. It does pertain to sustainable agriculture, and these events can be in person or online. So this is the third year that we've launched this program, and it's been very successful. So we hope to be able to continue it in the future. And I'll turn that over to David.
Okay. We have a second part of the PDP program, which is the state training funds. And this is where we have state coordinators in each state at each land grant university. So there are 2 per state. Alabama has an additional one at Tuskegee, and there's one in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. When you have a model state program, they receive $30,000 to hire a program assistant and $20,000 for training funds to be used in the state to support sustainable ag training. Alabama receives $20,000, and they don't have a program assistant. Now, this is where expiring funds come in. We have these discretionary funds when grants expire and they have funds left over. We have a pool of funds that we use for travel scholarships. It varies from year to year depending on how many expiring grant funds we have available. We manage it through the state coordinators. Requests for under $3,000, I can approve directly. If they exceed $3,000, I have to run it through the SARE Executive Committee, which meets monthly, or the full AC when they meet twice a year. Mentor farmer travel is allowed. In other words, if there are farm leaders and you want to send them to an event for training, that is permitted. The trainings must meet the train the trainer. So in other words, you must bring knowledge back that can be used to train other farmers with, or that you can use to develop a training program. It does not have to be events in the South. This can be any conference, workshop, training, anywhere that deals with sustainable agriculture. And that's one of the approval criteria, and to bring knowledge back into the Southern region. Fellows program is a little different. This is for extension, and it's operated out of the national office. There are 8 fellows each year, 4 are selected each year, and then they go through a 2-year program going to the various SARE regions, 1 spring, 1 fall training. They learn about sustainable agriculture and how SARE is different in each region. So after 2 years, they graduate out and a new class starts. We have an activity called Reading the Farm. They identify a farm in the region, they visit it, talk to the landowner, farmer, and then come up with ways to recommend how to make the operation more sustainable. The idea is to train both the farmer and the agents on what sustainable means.
All right, so you've heard a lot about the history of SARE, how it functions, how we function. And now I'm going to get into some of the other things, which will be repeating a little bit of what has been said, but then you'll actually get to see a visual of how to access some of the information. So the conference sponsorships you've heard some about, and again, the way those work, you're able to recognize through, I'm trying to pull up something, sorry. We'll go on the website and see more of that, but The Learning Center is the other thing we'll go on the website and take a look at, but you can get some resources, publications and other things on the website. And Jonathan just put the link in the chat. So whether it's national publications or regional, including fact sheets, bulletins, books, and more, building a sustainable business, building soils for better crops. These are just some of the subject matter. And you see on the slide there, some of the covers for some of those publications. And the list goes on in terms of crop rotation on organic farms for those listening that can't see this slide, Farmer's Guide to Business Structures, Managing Alternative Pollinators, Managing Cover Crops, Organic Transition, New Farmers Market. And this is just a list of examples of some of the publications, but there are many, many more on the website. And those links can be achieved by clicking in the chat when you have a chance to do that. Or I'm sure you'll get a follow-up message that will allow you to get to this information. Next slide. So lots of resources and educational materials, 291 different resources specific to the Southern region. And again, that page, that resources and learning page is on our website, southern.sare.org. And you'll be able to access that very easily once you get there, but there's also that link in the chat. 53% of producers reported using a new production practice after reading a SARE publication. And 64% of producers said that their SARE project helped them achieve higher sales. So that speaks to the ability of these publications to really help some of the farmers and other people out. And so now I'm going to share my screen and give you the ability to know how to access some of this information. Here we go. And so you should be seeing, I don't know, were you seeing the conference schedule there? No.
No.
Conference sponsorships. Let's try that one more time. Technology is wonderful when it works. Okay, hold 1 second. Let's. How about now? Yes? Okay. It's always a lot going on at SARE. There we go. And thank you, Jonathan, for putting the link to that in the chat. So this was mentioned already, but just so that you have access to it, this is the conference sponsorship page on the Southern SARE website. And it goes into the information about what can be sponsored, as well as what you need to know in order to be considered for sponsorship support, which was mentioned. Now, here we are at the resources and learning page, and you can get to it over there on the top right if you go straight to the homepage of southernsare.org. But I put in cover crops earlier as an example, and on the left side, you'll see how you can refine your research on this page, depending on what you're looking for. We have the Southern region checked off for the geographical relevance. And there's some categories down here, as well as different formats for publications and things that you may be looking for. So depending on what you check off, the results on the right will change so that they make sense with whatever you're looking for. And, your search will be more refined the more checks you add. So you'll be able to take a look and see how that works very easily if you come to this page. Let's see, bulletins, for example. And then it'll bring you right down, and you'll be able to just click on whichever one of these you want. And once you get in there, you'll see all the different additional resources, whether it's the PDFs downloadable or the videos or whatever else might be there for you. So lots of resources to be able to benefit from on our website, southernsare.org. And it's a pretty easy website to navigate. So you should go on there and have some fun.
Okay, thanks, Dara. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the information on this slide. David mentioned earlier in the presentation that each SARE, each state has SARE state ag coordinators who support the SARE program on a local level and help drive sustainable agriculture efforts in their own state. So in South Carolina, here's the listing of your state ag coordinators at Clemson and at South Carolina State University. And Jonathan serves as the SARE program assistant to assist those state ag coordinators in those efforts. So as you might have questions or other interests in the SARE program, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us on the presentation today for any questions that you might have about SARE. But I also encourage you to reach out to your state ag coordinators in your state for some of that local support. And I'll turn it over to Paul for a wrap up.
Thanks, Candace. Yeah, and I really don't have much to add. We'll open it up for discussion at this point, and if there are any questions, I've got maybe a few I can add to the discussion, some things that I carry over from our previous sessions. And there is a poll that we really would appreciate you filling out. It should be on your screen now. And it's very useful information to get from you all. Yeah, I guess thanks for coming and learning more about sustainable ag and the funding programs available in this area. Matt, anything you would like to say?
No, other than to reemphasize that Jonathan and I are here from Clemson to answer your questions, point you in the right direction, toss around ideas that you might want to propose, link you up with somebody else, any of those kinds of things. The publications that you heard about, we have a stash of them here. And if you contact Jonathan, he can send them to you, including a little handy dandy thumb drive that has most of those publications on it. So our job is to be here to help however we can. And if we can't answer the questions, we'll point you to whoever can. So that's what we're here for.
Great, thanks, Matt, and thanks to Jonathan for all the groundwork you've done. So let's open it up and see if anybody has any particular questions or comments, experiences, positive or negative. One thing I guess I wanted to mention is I think this works pretty well, but you know, it's been suggested in our trainings or the workshops here that you're you know, sometimes the question is, does my project idea fit in a particular funding program offered by SARE? And so the advice that we give is, first of all, make sure to read the call for proposals. The person writing the grant should read that carefully. Many questions will be answered, but then after that, you know, the state representatives here in South Carolina are very knowledgeable about the program and can help you decide if it fits or not. And then, of course, if they have any questions, they can contact us, and we'll help you know, sort of point them in the right direction. So that's one piece I wanted to suggest. But another is, this is all ad hoc, just things that occurred to me over the course of today. It's a good idea to review the concept of systems thinking. And in fact, there is a SARE publication on systems thinking. You don't have to be an expert in it, but there are two things you should make sure work their way into your, in the words that you use. yeah, there we go. Jonathan just put the link to the Understanding Systems Research publication. You don't have to revamp your entire proposal, but the reviewers are, they're going to look for it independent of SARE. Many of our reviewers will look for systems thinking in the wording of the proposal. And the other is make sure you link to those pillars of sustainability in your proposal, because the reviewer wants to know that this is how it fits in sustainable ag, and not assume that they know. So those are a couple of things. Yeah, I think that's it that I had. But any other questions or comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Don Jackson. I'm on listening to the presentation today.
Mhm.
How can I go back and link back up to the video?
Oh, Jonathan, or
I'm
you
going to
guys-
make that available. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll contact Jonathan and he'll give me a link because I'm picking up grandchildren.
Okay.
Hard
You-
to be in line picking up grandbabies.
Yeah, you got an important job to do today. So sure, it'll be there. Jonathan's he's got this technology part figured out. So
Yeah, I would love to see some of the slides but I enjoyed the presentation very much, and I guess that once I get that link, I could probably do the little poll that you're asking for too.
excellent.
And I'd like for them to do them a little later in the day if I could, being a producer. But hey, I don't set the times.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Very good. Any other comments or questions?
I just want to comment for our guests that the Southern SARE outreach team has gone above and beyond to reach out to South Carolina in every way possible. We've had, this is their 5th presentation in 2 days, about this stuff with different audiences, from university administrators to extension agents to faculty, scientists, to everything. And it shows a lot of commitment to, wanting the people in South Carolina to get more out of the program. And so I am just beyond grateful that they've devoted so much time to trying to help us spread the word.
It's been a pleasure, man. Yeah. Very good. Thanks. Candace, anything more before we break away?
No, I think Dara has her hand up.
Oh, sorry. I don't see those hands. Okay. Thank you.
No, I was just clapping.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah.
been quite a ride. This is
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
yeah.
raising your hand and there's clapping your hand.
well, what's the difference? I guess you got to raise them to clap them, right?
No,
But
I
for
just-
those on the phone, there are a couple poll questions that I don't think you can see. So they're just asking questions about how you enjoyed the presentation and if you're ready to apply, or if you want to learn more about the grant reviewer process or to be a grant reviewer, those types of things. And if you've received any grants before or even applied for any. So those are the types of questions there in the poll, if you want to respond to any of that.
Excellent. Well, once again, thanks you all. Sorry, there's another comment.
Yeah, no, that's me. It's Candace. I just wanted to just say thanks to Matt and Jonathan for
Yeah.
putting the work into getting us all together and getting these presentations presented over the last couple of days. Hopefully we have good things coming out in terms of next steps, and just please feel free to share the information that we've presented over the last couple of days with other organizations or individuals who haven't had the opportunity to be able to listen in on it. So, and we're always here for if anybody has any questions about anything.
Good. Thanks, Candace.
And I want to concur with all of those that are saying that this has been a really great outreach effort on behalf of Southern SARE. It's one of my first joining with the SARE team, so I'm really proud to be a part of this group of folks that really cares about what they're doing. Great listeners, and definitely willing to innovate solutions once the feedback comes and we're able to do something with it. So great job.
Thank you, Dara. Folks, if there's nothing else, we'll hopefully see you in a live setting, face to face, some future day. Take care.